Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Edmonton Real Estate Today. I am your host, LeRoy Warden, and today I have with me two very special guests, Sheryl Stevens of RE/MAX Real Estate.
Good morning.
And Jodi Dahl of YEGPro Realty.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you guys.
You as well.
So we're here to discuss the market for October. The Real Estate Association reported 2,400 new listings coming on the market and sales around 1,334. The inventory was around 8,000. If I'm a home buyer out there in today's market, what would those numbers mean to me?
Well, number one, it gives them a sense of, again, the stuff that's selling. So it tells them that, okay, if there's almost 8,000 listings and there was 1,300 sales, obviously they've still got lots to choose from on the market, right? The main thing for them to know is that, again, with 1,334 homes that sold last month, we know that's really relative to what sold the month before. So, you know what, the sales trend, as you would say, is obviously pretty balanced for the last couple months.
Yes.
So it's just important that they know that there's options out there. They definitely have some great quality homes out there, but the key is just that they get out there and they actually, you know, chat with their realtors, be educated by the ones that meet their criteria. So they don't need to see all 8,000, they really just need to see those ones that check off all those boxes instead of the, well, maybe if I move this wall, right? We really just want to get them into the style of home they want, the area they want, and have the amenities. But Jodi, what do you think about the buyers out there?
I think buyers need to be really educated, work with their realtor. We really need to concentrate on market evaluations. Before you write any offers, sit down with your buyers, educate them, go over the stats, and you need to compare apples to apples. So if you're looking at half duplexes, only look at comparable half duplex sales in that neighborhood. We don't need to be so broad, and crunch those numbers, get them down, and your buyers will see that there are deals to be had and there's good things to buy out there.
And I think that's a really valid point. I know I was chatting with one of my buyers recently, and they were really surprised that the list price that this house came on the market was probably about 50,000 over what the other ones were doing in the area.
Yeah.
And so I know it was a tricky situation because they right away feel like they want to get it at market value. But I know the seller, when we wrote at market value, the seller was sort of offended because they felt like, well, no, why are you, they felt we were coming in 50,000 too low. But again, when you look at the comparables, that house should have been on 50,000 lower, right?
And I think and that's what I tell my buyers all the time, like, listen, let's look at these comparables. If we're gonna write this low, we need to show why. We can't just say because that's our number. You need to have a reason. So you pull your comparables, you see this house is 50,000 too high, your buyers still wanna go after it. It's our job to make sure they don't overpay.
Right.
And it's the seller's realtor's job to make sure that they get fair market value.
Good point, and that just makes me think of, sometimes the buyers feel like bothered if they're only getting 5,000 off the asking price because they really feel like everyone, we were chatting the other day about how everyone hears from their coworkers and their friends and their family that they should get a bigger deal because on the news and everywhere, it's all about being a buyer's market. So they feel to some degree when they don't get a huge
discount off that list price. Yeah, I agree. I have a lot of buyers that are like that too. I've also found that some of those buyers have missed out on houses because we've come in too low. The house really is priced well, and it sells to someone else who's willing to pay it.
Right, and I think that's just it. It's reconfirming that education that even if you're only getting 5,000 off, if it's at market value, you're doing great because you're still getting it $5,000 off market value.
And really,
right?
That's our job. Like, my job is to make sure my buyers pay market value.
Right.
Or maybe a little bit better depending on the seller circumstances and who's willing to go lower. But that's also my job to make sure my sellers get market value too. Not that the buyers steal something from the sellers, or not that the buyers, right? That's not what we're here for.
How is the weather heading into winter affecting all of these numbers? Because is there a seasonal effect now?
For sure, even just over the last 2 months, our sales have been really comparable, like just, let's say, roughly 50,000 difference. So so far the fall hasn't really adjusted things much.
No.
Obviously, I think the winter will change things a little bit more. But you're right, like if somebody's, job transfer. I know I've had lots of people moving into the city this year. So we've got job transfers, we have divorce, as much as we hate to say it, but those people are going to be motivated. And so the thing is, if you're listing in the winter, we know you're serious,
Yes.
right? And if a buyer's out there willing to look in -20, then again, the sellers should know that when they're getting those showings may be a little bit less often than, let's say, in the summer or whatever. But again, you're dealing with, serious buyers, because otherwise they wouldn't be out in -20.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
Or even -10.
That's right, or even -10.
If I'm a home seller trying to sell my home in today's market, what guidance would you give me looking at what's happening right now in terms of inventory and sales?
I would say number one, stay on the market.
Yes.
Because I've been hearing more and more when I'll call to book a showing and the seller's agent is telling me, oh no, what, they're thinking of taking it off the market. And I just think, again, I would recommend to all my sellers, stay on the market because you are going to have less competition.
Right.
And the idea is that, again, when those buyers are out, they're going to be motivated. So again, for the sellers, I think it's really, really important that they just dress up their house really, really well, which meaning it doesn't take a lot. It's decluttering, it's cleaning, and it's doing that little bit extra that maybe our parents used to do weekly that we now do monthly. It's wiping down the baseboards, it's the windowsills, all those things, because if a buyer comes in and sees that all those little things are done, they really get that satisfaction feeling of this person maintained their home. And just that feeling will push them over to the edge to write that offer.
Right.
Because you could have two comparable properties, but you know what? If yours shines that little bit more, they're going to write. And I'm sure you've had that where...
Yeah, no, I agree 100% if you're on the market. So right now, about 30% of houses are selling and 70% are not.
Okay.
So that's a big number. So you have a 30% chance of selling. Well, you better look good.
Right.
So you need to be clean, you need to smell good, and you need to be uncluttered. None of these things cost money.
Right.
Like everybody should be able to do this if you're listing your house.
Yeah, good point. And I think there is those, vacant homes when people can, take the time to stage. It was funny, I was in a house the other day and it was staged, but really minimally. It was like a plant in the corner. It was just a little spruce of color over here. They didn't bring in a whole whack of furniture. But you know what, even my buyer commented, oh, they did a really good job making it feel homey. And that's the stuff that will put people over the edge to buy that one instead of the other 7, right?
Absolutely. And if you have a vacant home, like make sure someone's checking on it. Make sure the heat is on.
Right.
Like there's nothing like going into a vacant house with a buyer and you're so cold you can't even stay to look at the house.
Right. Or even having a mat at the front door.
Mat at the front
Right,
door, like
yeah.
really
This is the
small
season.
things make a big difference. Yeah.
No, and I would agree with that.
The other stats that were released by the association was the average price of a single family home was $421. For a condo, it was $228. And for a duplex, it was $329. Now, the days on market for each of these, a single family was 60 days, condos were 76, and duplexes was 63 days. As a home buyer and home seller out there right now, what do these numbers mean to them?
You want to take that?
So to talk about days on market, so days on market is really, it means how many days on the market your home has been until it's sold. For buyers, it means you have a little bit more time to look. Maybe when you're looking at something, it's not selling immediately, so you have a little bit more time to go in for second showings.
Right.
And for sellers, it means you need to have your house ready and marketable for a little bit longer. So now we're talking 60 days of keeping your house ready to be shown.
And so, and I would just take that as reminding my sellers that it may take around that 60 days. But again, if their house pops, right?
Yes.
Because the thing is, if they're that, like you said earlier, there's roughly 30% that are selling, there's a good chance that some of those are selling right away, which again, changes the averages because some of them that have sat and they're kind of chasing the market, right? I think which is important for us when we're actually working with that buyer is knowing how long has that house really sat. Because I know I was looking up acreages yesterday and there's some houses that have been on the market over 300 days. Well, we want to know that when we're actually going in to write an offer. Because it may look like it's only been on for 12. right?
Well, yeah, because when you relist, you're coming up as 0 days on market, which is
Yes.
great for your seller because you're coming up fresh and shiny and new,
Right.
but a little deceiving for buyers.
Yeah, and I think that's where our job comes in, right? To give them that
Absolutely.
education.
I think we could also maybe use that with our sellers as, okay, 60 days on the market, we don't have an offer, something needs to change, whether that's price, whether that's the condition of the house,
Right.
whether that's marketing on our part, like something has to give because we should have been sold, so why aren't we? So
Right.
now we want to go from the 70% to the 30% and be sold.
Exactly. No, good point.
With everything you've already said, what do you guys see that will be happening for the remainder of this year?
From what we've seen the last few months, they've been quite comparable for the number of sales. So I see something similar. Of course, with winter coming, things usually drop off a little bit more.
Yes.
But I don't see any big, huge changes over the next few months. The thing to keep in mind is the buyers have more options. The ones that maybe didn't qualify before or found that they qualified, but their monthly payment was just a little more than they could handle, they now have the option because the government put in that program into effect in September that now those home buyers that maybe found things a little tight have another option where the government will actually, if you have 5% to put down, the government will match your 5% if you're actually a first-time home buyer and or recently divorced. So the key is looking into that first-time home buyers program that the government's put into place to find out if you qualify. With the winter season, I think it's just going to continue our norm of what we've established the last month or so. But again, there's going to be still those qualified buyers out there as well as those sellers that are motivated. So I see us just going into, a good winter season with consistency.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, ladies. Well, again, we appreciate you guys coming out to update us on what is happening in the market. And I'm sure our listeners would be very pleased to know that things are going to stay consistent heading through. So good seeing you.
Thank you.
All right.
You too.
And
Thank you.
Jodi.
Thanks for having me.
No
As
problem.
always.
All right, guys.